You're hosting this first G20 African, on the African continent. We know what a challenge it is to organize a major international conference, and this summit reflects the growing importance of your country and Africa as a whole on the global stage. And I think I can speak on behalf of everybody that you have been a fantastic host, so thank you for that. In the run-up to this summit, the Netherlands was pleased to work with you on key themes of your presidency: solidarity, equality, and sustainability. And as the world's 18th largest economy, we greatly appreciate the opportunity to be part of the G20 again this year. I would like to make some brief remarks on three topics that all feed into one another: economic growth, debt sustainability, and private capital mobilization. First, it's clear that we need economic growth in order to achieve inclusive and sustainable development. However, the most straightforward and direct way to unlock economic growth is to immediately end Russia's unjust and unprovoked war in Ukraine. Not only is it causing unbearable human suffering, it also continues to have significant negative global economic spillover effects. And it's the real reason scarce resources have to be invested in Ukraine. Only a just and lasting peace can put an end to all this and can guarantee the security of Ukraine and Europe. Second, on debt sustainability, it's a fact that high debt levels stand in the way of growth. Every dollar spent on interest cannot be spent on investing in a stronger economy. So that's why the Netherlands strongly supports the G20's work on debt sustainability. Specifically, we think it's important to continue working on transparency, because that transparency can help boost investors' confidence in borrowing countries, which in turn will stimulate financing for development. And third, we know there are insufficient public funds to tackle the enormous needs of developing countries. So therefore, we need private capital mobilization as well. So I applaud the finance track for the excellent job it has done this year, mapping out new ways to unlock institutional capital for investment in emerging markets. And this includes innovative approaches in the Netherlands to mobilize pension fund capital. It is important that the G20 continues this path. So my appeal, Mr. Chair, is for more international economic cooperation, more transparency, and more private funding, especially when they benefit the world's most vulnerable people. And we realize it's easier said than done. But if the G20 continues to show leadership in this endeavor, I assure you the Dutch government and the Dutch investors stand ready to work with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed. And now I would like to call upon His Excellency, the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Norway, Mr. Jonas Støre, to take the floor.
Thank you very much. I'm his Chief of Staff and will speak on his behalf. Dear President Ramaphosa, it has been a privilege for Norway to be an invited country during South Africa's G20 presidency. And it's also an honor to attend this first G20 summit here in Africa, under the able leadership of you, President Ramaphosa. I commend South Africa for placing a special emphasis on the issue of inequality. And I thank Professor Stiglitz for providing important input to our discussion, including the crucial observation that inequality is not a given. Inequality is the result of policy choices. As such, it can be fought, including with a progressive taxation system, an effective welfare system covering everyone, and not least, measures that ensure equal opportunities for women and men. Norway invests in equality because it's the best antidote to exclusion, to resettlement, to conflict, and democratic backsliding. And we invest in equality because it improves the lives of our citizens and makes our economy stronger. Let me give an example from my country. Research shows that increase in women's participation in the workforce from the 1970s and onwards has mattered just as much to our economy as our revenues from oil and gas. Rising inequality is a global challenge. It is a factor in almost any issue we are dealing with, from war and climate change to poverty and health. inequality hampers development. Therefore, we fully support the objectives outlined for the International Panel on Inequality. And we support the central message in the report. Reducing inequality requires more international cooperation. And let me point out 3 priorities. Number 1, we must implement the Compromiso de Sevilla. The comprehensive framework was agreed at the 4th Financing for Development Conference. It provides a roadmap to address many of the issues also raised in the report by Professor Stiglitz. Secondly, we have to make progress on the WTO reform. Rule-based trades is crucial for economic growth and development. Multilateralism matters. It's on us to make sure that the next year's WTO ministerial meeting delivers and that Director General Ngozi has the backing she needs. Third, we should continue to strengthen multilateral development banks. Going forward, they will be the main source of development finance. The G20 plays a special role in making sure that they are fit for the task. Excellencies, Norway is a long-standing friend of Africa. We support the development aspirations of the people. Approximately 300 of you here has mentioned, especially the situation in Gaza, Sudan, and Ukraine. We support peace in Ukraine, and no one wants peace more than the Ukrainians themselves. We welcome efforts for peace, but for peace to ensure, it must be just and must be rooted in international law, respect the basic tenets of the UN Charter, and provide for the future security of Ukraine and for the rest of Europe. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you for the contribution. We always are grateful for contributions that are made for the development of our continent. So please pass on our gratitude. We now go ahead and call His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, the Emir of the State of Qatar. Okay, it does seem like the Sheikh should be in a bilateral somewhere. We will come back to him. I now move on to ask His Excellency, Dr. Julius Maada Bio, the President of the Republic of Sierra Leone and the Chairperson of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Your Excellencies, distinguished leaders, ladies and gentlemen, I want to start by congratulating our host for being a great host, especially for the warmth and hospitality that he has extended to us. I now bring you warm greetings from the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. The region is currently celebrating its golden anniversary in recognition of various achievements, but also reflecting on the future of the community. We gather here to make important decisions on trade, finance for development, and the existential debt burden. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, trade is not just about goods crossing borders, but about creating opportunities in Africa for over 1.4 billion people and providing opportunities to create employment and wealth. In Africa, we are committed to boosting intra-African trade through effective implementation of the African Continental free trade area. A system that empowers small businesses, connects landlocked communities, and unlocks regional value chains. However, we cannot do it alone. We call on G20 to, 1, reform global trade rules to ensure fair access for African exports. 2, invest in trade facilitation, digital corridors, and green logistics. 3, support the full implementation of FTAs, such as the AFCFTA, especially for the effective participation of women and youth entrepreneurs. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, development finance must move from charity to strategy. Africa does not lack ambition, but affordable capital. The cost of borrowing for many of our countries is up to 8 times higher for advanced countries. We urge G20 to, 1, scale up concessional finance and blended instruments for climate resilience, digital infrastructure, and urban transformation. 2, empower national and subnational institutions with direct access to global capital markets. 3, champion innovative tools like diaspora bonds, carbon credit, and SDG-linked instruments that reflect Africa's realities. Scale up climate finance commitments. Africa contributes, as we all know, less than 4% to global emissions, yet bears the highest climate cost. G20 must support the realization of the 100 billion climate finance pledge and accelerate access to loss and damage fund. To advance global peace and security, the G20 must lead the effort to redress the issues of increasing global poverty, economic inequality, and justice, which feeds global security challenges. G20 must work to evolve a more peaceful world in which prosperity and advancement for all is a global goal. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, today over 20 African countries face high risk of debt distress, not necessarily due to reckless borrowing, but because we borrow in a structurally unjust system. The cost of borrowing and servicing for many African countries is prohibitively high, thereby diverting funds from crucial sectors such as health, education, and infrastructure, as has been alluded to by many already. The G20's common framework must evolve. We need, 1, timely, transparent, and equitable debt restructuring across all creditor classes, intercreditor burden sharing and binding timelines, access to concessional finance and capital on fairer terms, a new debt climate development compact that links relief to resilience, addressing issues like illicit financial flows, profit shifting, and marginalization in global value chains is crucial for long-term solutions. We offer the following recommendations. We propose the establishment of a task force on trade and finance for structural transformation. 2, we call on multilateral development banks to create dedicated credit lines for regional and urban development. We urge the summit to adopt a multi-pronged approach on fiscal space, financial innovation, and institutional capacity as the foundation of a new global economic architecture. And finally, we call for a recommitment to the multilateral trading system that we are used to. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, President Madabio. Your Excellencies, I'd like to announce that we will be taking a family photo in about half an hour and 30 minutes. When we have finished the guest country speakers list, which we will finish shortly. Thereafter, we will take a family photo and stretch our legs before we come to listen to the inputs from international organizations. I now call upon His Excellency, Prime Minister and Minister of Finance of the Republic of Singapore, Mr. Lawrence Wong, to take the floor.
Thank you, President Ramaphosa. Excellencies, I start by thanking President Ramaphosa and the South African government for the excellent arrangements and for inviting Singapore to this historic G20 summit, the first time on African soil. The agenda today is on growth, and growth can only be sustained in a stable global environment. For decades, the rules-based multilateral system anchored by the WTO provided this stability. But the system is now under severe strain. One reason is that the system has been optimized for efficiency in a different era, and it has not caught up with the realities of today's world. Realities like digital trade, as well as the fact that interdependencies are increasingly being seen as vulnerabilities and are open to being weaponized or used as leverage in moments of dispute. Understandably, countries are taking actions to protect themselves and to prioritize resilience and security. Yet, if every nation goes its own way, the global system will unravel even more quickly. And when that happens, everyone will be worse off. And the heaviest burden will fall on the developing nations. So we do need to reform and update the global system to ensure it addresses the strategic realities of our time. First, we must recommit to the core foundations which remain relevant today, and that means upholding international law and the norms and practices that guide state behavior. That is critical to continued peace and stability in the world. Second, we must reform the current system, be it the WTO or other global institutions. We cannot be paralyzed by old ways of doing things. We all have to get behind the urgent reforms that are needed in the WTO so that it becomes more effective and outcome-oriented. We should complement the WTO with flexible multilateral approaches, and that's why Singapore supports minilaterals and plurilaterals, which can serve as important pathfinders towards updating global rules. Third, we should build new partnerships, and as several colleagues have talked about just now, we are making progress with partnerships and dialogues between the CPTPP and ASEAN, as well as the CPTPP and the EU. In fact, 2 days ago, ministers came together and had a very productive trade and investment dialogue covering issues like trade and investment facilitation, digital trade, and supply chain resilience. In the same regard, we should look at ways in which we can bring the free trade areas and free trade blocks in Africa closer with Southeast Asia and ASEAN. Recently, Singapore also joined with other countries like New Zealand, Switzerland, and the UAE to launch a new framework called the Future of Investment and Trade Partnership that brings together small and medium-sized economies to keep up the momentum of trade liberalization. All of these efforts can form the foundations of a more resilient and secure multilateral trading system. To be clear, building a new global economic architecture will require significant effort and considerable political will. Multiple efforts are already underway, as I described just now. The G20 can and should play a key leadership role in coordinating these efforts. and Singapore stands ready to do our part and work with all members towards this objective. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Prime Minister Wong. I now move on and request His Excellency, the Prime Minister of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, Mr. Phang Minh Chinh, to take the floor.
Thưa ngài Formosa, thưa các nhà lãnh đạo và quý vị đại biểu, tôi xin chúc mừng ngài Tổng thống và chính phủ Nam Phi đã đảm nhận vai trò Chủ tịch G20 năm 2015 và đánh giá cao chủ đề đoàn kết, bình đẳng, phát triển bền vững. Thế giới đang trải qua những thay đổi sâu sắc mang tính thời đại. Nhiều vấn đề chưa có tiền lệ mang tính toàn dân, toàn diện và toàn cầu. Trong bối cảnh đó, quản trị toàn cầu cần hướng tới mục tiêu trọng tâm là duy trì hòa bình, ổn định và phát triển bao trùm toàn diện. Nguyên tắc quan trọng nhất là tôn trọng, bình đẳng, cùng có lợi dựa trên luật lệ và thông lệ quốc tế. Đoàn kết, hợp tác, đối thoại nhằm tạo ra sức mạnh, đem lại lợi ích, củng cố niềm tin. Cách tiếp cận xuyên suốt là toàn dân, toàn diện, toàn cầu, đặt con người ở vị trí trung tâm. Với phương châm đoàn kết để có sức mạnh, hợp tác để có lợi ích, đối thoại để có lòng tin, tôi xin đề xuất G20 thúc đẩy 3 cái đảm bảo chiến lược sau đây. Một là đảm bảo ổn định để phát triển trong quan hệ quốc tế, chính trị, thế giới và kinh tế vĩ mô toàn cầu. G20 cần đi đầu xây dựng cơ chế tăng cường đoàn kết, hợp tác quốc tế, tôn trọng lẫn nhau, tìm giải pháp phù hợp giải quyết các xung đột, tạo môi trường thuận lợi cho phát triển, phối hợp chính sách để ngăn ngừa rủi ro hệ thống, ứng phó khủng hoảng, hạn chế rào cản thương mại, giảm thiểu phân mảnh, chuỗi cung ứng, thúc đẩy các sáng kiến, chuyển đổi nợ, đảm bảo ổn định vĩ mô toàn cầu. Hai là đảm bảo hệ thống thương mại đa phương dựa trên luật lệ với trung tâm là WTO, hệ thống tài chính toàn cầu cân bằng, minh bạch, cởi mở, quyền tiếp cận bình đẳng về khoa học, công nghệ và tài chính cho phát triển. Tôi đề nghị G20 tăng cường hợp tác, đấu tranh không chính trị hóa khoa học và thương mại, hỗ trợ các nước đang phát triển bằng cách chính sách thương mại công bằng, hài hòa lợi ích, phát triển hệ thống tài chính hiệu quả và nâng cao năng lực chuyển đổi số, đáp ứng tốt hơn yêu cầu phát triển nhanh và bền vững của các quốc gia. Thúc đẩy cải tổ toàn diện WTO để hoạt động tích cực, hiệu quả hơn. Ba là đảm bảo quản trị toàn cầu linh hoạt, hiệu quả, tạo nên hệ sinh thái cho phát triển mạnh mẽ trong kỷ nguyên chuyển đổi số, chuyển đổi xanh. Tôi mong G20 cùng các cơ chế đa phương tăng cường đối thoại, xây dựng khuôn khổ quản trị toàn cầu, hài hòa giữa kinh tế, xã hội và môi trường, giữa hiện tại và tương lai, công bằng, cân bằng lợi ích giữa các nền kinh tế với nhau, thúc đẩy hợp tác về trí tuệ nhân tạo, biến đổi khí hậu, phòng chống thiên tai, dịch bệnh. Thưa quý vị, cố Tổng thống Nelson Mandela từng nói, chừng nào nghèo đói, bất công và bất bình đẳng vẫn còn tồn tại trên thế giới, không ai trong chúng ta có thể thực sự nghỉ ngơi. Việt Nam sẵn sàng hợp tác tích cực, bình đẳng, cùng có lợi với các nước G20 và cộng đồng quốc tế vì một thế giới hòa bình, văn minh, thịnh vượng, phát triển bền vững và bao trùm, không để ai bị bỏ lại phía sau, để mọi người dân đều được hưởng từ thành quả của phát triển và hội nhập quốc tế sâu rộng, thực chất và hiệu quả. Xin trân trọng
Thank you
cảm
very
ơn.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I now call upon His Excellency Mr. Sifi Grieb, Prime Minister of the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria, to take the floor.
شكرا السيد الرئيس سيريل رامافوزا. اسمحوا لي أولا أن أنقل إليكم تحيات رئيس الجمهورية السيد عبد المجيد تبون الذي شرفني بإلقاء الكلمة التي يوجهها لهذه القمة. هذا نصها: فخامة الرئيس سيريل رامافوزا رئيس جمهورية جنوب أفريقيا، أصحاب الفخامة رؤساء الدول والحكومات، السيدات والسادة الحضور الكريم، يسعدني بداية أن أعرب عن خالص شكري لفخامة الرئيس سيريل رامافوزا على دعوته الكريمة لبلدي للمشاركة في هذه القمة الهامة التي نفخر بانعقادها لأول مرة في أرض إفريقية، مشيدا عاليا بالأولويات والمواضيع المقترحة خلال جلساتها، بما يعكس إدراكا ووعيا كبيرين بحجم التحديات المعقدة التي تواجه عالمنا اليوم على الصعيدين السياسي الاقتصادي، وتؤثر أيما تأثير على التجانس العالمي إن لم يتم التكفل بها بشكل جدي جماعي وسريع. السيد الرئيس، فيما يخص الأولويات المطروحة على طاولة اجتماعنا هذا، اسمحوا لي بالتطرق إلى النقاط التالية. أولاً، تجدد الجزائر الدعوة إلى معالجة عاجلة لمسألة ثقل المديونية وخدماتها على الدول النامية والأكثر فقراً من خلال مقاربة تتضمن مسح جانب منها أو تحويلها إلى استثمارات مباشرة ومجدية في هذه الدول، مع مراعاة ضرورة تصحيح التعقيدات التقنية لمسألة تقييم المخاطر من خلال إصلاحات عميقة تسمح بإيجاد مخرج للدول التي تئن تحت وطأة الديون السيادية. ثانياً، تضم الجزائر صوتها إلى أصوات الدول الداعية إلى إصلاح المنظمات المالية الدولية ضمن مقاربة حوكمة اقتصادية ومالية راشدة من خلال مراجعة آليات اتخاذ القرار بشكل يضمن تمثيلاً عادلاً ومنصفاً وشفافاً للدول النامية والقارة الإفريقية في هيئات تسيير هذه المؤسسات. ثالثاً، إن الجزائر التي ما فتئت ترافع من أجل تعبئة التمويلات الدولية وحشد الموارد لدعم الجهود العالمية لتمكين الدول النامية والدول الأكثر فقراً من وسائل وتكنولوجيات الانتقال نحو استعمال الطاقة الخضراء، تدعو من هذا المنبر إلى تجسيد شراكات ثنائية ودولية في هذا المجال. رابعاً، تؤيد الجزائر جميع المبادرات الرامية إلى الرفع من حجم التمويلات المخصصة للوقاية من المخاطر الكبرى والاستجابة السريعة للكوارث، وتدعو إلى حث المؤسسات المالية والبنوك الدولية للتفكير في آلية تمويل تفعل في حال ما إذا طلبت إحدى البلدان المتضررة ذلك. السيد الرئيس، لقد شهد العالم قرابة عامين متتاليين الجرائم الشنعاء التي ارتكبت في حق الشعب الفلسطيني الأعزل، وعاين حجم الدمار الذي خلفته هذه الحرب الهمجية، الأمر الذي يدفعنا للإعراب عن أملنا في أن تبادر دول مجموعة ال20 بإطلاق تعبئة عامة قصد بناء غد أفضل للشعب الفلسطيني، مؤكداً التزام بلادي بإعلان انضمامها إلى كل خطوة قد تتخذها بهذا الصدد. أشكركم على حسن الإصغاء.
Thank you. There was no real instantaneous translation to that input. Could the translation people look into it? But we now move on. Can it be done now? Yes. let it be done.
Excellency President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. I would like to convey to you the greetings of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, who entrusted me with delivering his address to this summit as follows. Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. Permit me to start by expressing my sincere gratitude to His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa for his kind invitation to my country to participate in this important summit, the first ever held on African soil, which represents a moment of immense pride for our entire continent. Algeria highly commends the priorities and topics proposed during this session, which reflect a profound understanding and awareness of the magnitude of the complex challenges facing our world today, both politically and economically, and which will significantly impact global harmony if not addressed seriously, collectively, and swiftly. Mr. President, with regard to the priorities put before us in this meeting, allow me to make the following comments. First, Algeria reiterates its call for an urgent solution to the issue of the burden of the debt and its servicing on developing and poorest countries. This solution should include a partial debt write-off or its conversion to direct and viable investments in these countries, while taking into account the need to correct the technical complexities of risk assessment through profound reforms that will provide a way out for countries struggling under the weight of the sovereign debt. Second, Algeria joins the voices of countries calling for the reform of international financial organizations within a framework of sound economic financial governance. This includes reviewing decision-making mechanisms to ensure fair, equitable, and transparent representation for developing countries and the African continent within the governing bodies of these institutions. Third, Algeria, which has consistently advocated for mobilizing international funding and resources to support global efforts to empower developing countries and the poorest nations with the means and technologies of green energy transition, calls for the establishment of bilateral and international partnerships in this field. Fourth, Algeria supports all initiatives aimed at increasing funding allocated to major risk prevention and rapid disaster response, and calls for urging international financial institutions and banks to consider a financing mechanism that can be activated should an affected country request it. Mr. President, for nearly 2 consecutive years, the world has witnessed the heinous crimes committed against the defenseless Palestinian people and has seen the extent of the devastation wrought by this war. This compels us to express our hope that the G20 countries would launch a comprehensive mobilization to build a better future for the Palestinian people, and I reaffirm my country's commitment to supporting any step they may take in this regard. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you. I'd now like to call upon the Prime Minister of the Arab Republic of Egypt, Dr. Mustafa Madbouly, to take the floor.
His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa, Excellencies, Heads of the States and Government, ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to join you today on behalf of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi at the G20 Summit. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the sisterly Republic of South Africa for the warm hospitality and excellent organization of the first summit on African soil, and to express Egypt's deep appreciation to the South African G20 presidency for its kind invitation to participate as a guest in the G20 meetings this year. We also commend South Africa's leadership in steering the group's work and in advancing Africa's priorities. In a world faced by unprecedented global challenges, the G20 has a critical role in addressing the main global economic challenges, including the reform of the international financial architecture to ensure that it is responsive to the developmental needs of developing countries. This includes enhancing access to concessional finance through establishing new financial mechanisms while strengthening the effectiveness of existing ones, improving the business models and financing capabilities of the IFIs and the MDBs, and ensuring stronger representation of developing countries in the global economic governance. It is also imperative to reform the complicated global debt landscape by establishing new mechanisms for managing debt in a comprehensive and sustainable manner in low-income and middle-income countries. We also aspire to reinvigorate the global commitment of multilateralism, including the rule-based multilateral trading system with the WTO at its core, to promote trade as engine of sustainable development and inclusive growth. Excellencies, peace and development are strongly interlinked. The Sharm el-Sheikh Peace Summit that ended the war in Gaza paved the way for a more stable, peaceful, and prosperous Middle East. We welcome the adoption of the Security Council resolution on Gaza Strip on November 17th, and we stress the urgent need to start the implementation of the second phase of President Trump's plan to deal with the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza through providing the necessary humanitarian assistance and to embark on the early recovery and reconstruction of the Strip without delay, while working at the same time on a final settlement of the Palestinian question based on the two-state solution. Egypt will host an international conference on the early recovery and reconstruction in Gaza, and I invite your countries to participate in it. In conclusion, I look forward to achieving constructive outcomes out of this summit to fulfill the aspiration of our peoples for a better world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I now would like to request the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Vice President Kashim Shettima, to take the floor and address us.
Mr. President, Heads of State and Government, Excellencies, let me at the outset express appreciation to His Excellency President Matameta Cyril Ramaphosa for the warm reception in this beautiful city of Johannesburg. May I further use this opportunity to congratulate him on the successes of the South Africa G20 presidency, including his purposeful leadership in steering the affairs of the group in a number of processes and negotiations which will culminate in a leader's declaration. Nigeria, as one of the invited guest countries of this year's G20 summit, commends the concerted efforts of the group in mobilizing action towards accelerated attainment of inclusive sustainable growth, where financing for development is guaranteed and no one or country is left behind. The theme of the Session 1 of the Leaders Summit, Inclusive and Sustainable Economic Growth, leaving no one behind, building our economies, the role of trade, financing for development, and the debt burden, is apt and speaks to the challenges of developing countries. The current multilateral framework do not adequately reflect the realities of today's world. Many developing nations continue to face systematic barriers to economic growth, trade, and financial inclusivity. For trade to be truly inclusive, the G20 must take bold steps towards reforming the international financial architecture and global institutions. Only a more equitable and effective system can fairly manage global financial flows, address recurring debt crises, and respond to the needs of all nations, especially those in the global south. Africa cannot realize the positive paradigm shift we seek in its development trajectory without a collective resolve of the G20. Together, we must confront the persistent regional challenges before us, most notably the urgent need for sustainable financing to ensure effective implementation of our developmental priorities. Across many regions, rising debt burdens continue to constrain economic progress and transform local challenges into global vulnerabilities. Ensuring debt sustainability while responsibly leveraging critical minerals for inclusive and enduring development must remain central priorities for the G20. The G20 must, in the adoption of the Leaders' Declaration, take very seriously the need to advance policies that drive sustainable growth, promote financial inclusion, and tackle emerging risk. This includes support for indigenous production, export from Africa, and mechanisms to enhance significant increase in FDI flows to the African region. Nigeria has in recent times demonstrated its readiness for both foreign direct and portfolio investments. This progress is driven in part by the fiscal policies introduced by the present administration, all aimed at enhancing the ease of doing business in Nigeria. We are committed to establishing 1,000 active businesses in each ward in Nigeria, with a clear objective of stimulating our local economy through grassroots empowerment, skills acquisition, and job creation. We commend the efforts of the World Trade Organization and its leadership for providing technical assistance to boost fair trade, including through the Women Exporters in the Digital Economy Fund launched in 2024. This initiative has provided grants and technical support to women entrepreneurs and strengthened their digital capabilities and access to global markets. Mr. President, as I conclude, I reaffirm Nigeria's unalloyed commitment to the G20. Let us continue to work side by side, shaping an economic future that uplifts every nation and leaves no one or country behind. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice President. I now ask His Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, His Excellency Constantino Chiwenga, to take the floor.
Your Excellency President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, Your Excellencies, Zimbabwe joins others to thank the President of South Africa's G20 Chair. Excellencies, Zimbabwe appreciates the opportunity to engage with the G20 as we collectively chart a trajectory towards inclusive and sustainable economic growth. Over the past few years, our global economies have faced multiple shocks and geopolitical tensions that have disrupted global supply chains. Our shared vision should therefore be one of building resilient and innovative economies that deliver prosperity for all. In Zimbabwe, our national strategy is firmly aligned with the 2030 Agenda and the African Union's Agenda 2063. Our focus is on, one, value addition industrialization by moving up global value chain, and two, human capital development by creating decent jobs, empowering youth and women, strengthening and formalizing SMEs, as essential drivers for inclusive growth. And 3, structural reforms by enhancing the ease of doing business, including the use of artificial intelligence, strengthening governance, and improving transparency across value chains. And 4, climate resilience, accelerating investments in renewable energy, decarbonization, climate adaptation, and water security to safeguard our development trajectory from systematic shocks. Excellencies, the G20 must reinforce a fair and transparent multilateral trading system under the World Trade Organization. Equally, critical is addressing the major challenge of assessing affordable and sustainable finance. We welcome efforts to reform the international financial system and propose recapitalization of multilateral development banks to expand concessional and climate finance. 2, promotion of innovative financing through active re-promotion of mechanisms such as the green bonds, blended finance, and diaspora investments. And 3rd, curbing illicit flows by strengthening efforts against illicit financial flows, tax evasion, and profit shifting to enhance domestic resource mobilization in developing countries. The growing debt burden continues to constrain development. Many nations are forced to choose between servicing debt and funding essential social services. We urgently need a comprehensive and equitable debt resolution approach. We encourage innovative solutions such as debt for climate, debt for development swaps. These measures are crucial to restoring debt sustainability while supporting long-term growth and resilience. Furthermore, the G20 Common Framework for Debt Treatments requires significant strengthening. In view of this, Zimbabwe seeks inclusion and active participation in an improved G20 Common Framework for the debt treatment process. We are ready to engage constructively to that end. The journey for inclusive and sustainable growth demands political will and an unwavering commitment to equitable development. Let us reaffirm our collective commitment to building a stronger, fairer, greener, and more humane global economy that truly leaves no one behind. I thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Chiwenga. I now have my last 2 speakers before we take a leg stretch break in order to go and take the family picture. Soon we will be able to stretch our legs. I now ask His Highness Sheikh Khaled bin Al Nahyan, the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, the United Arab Emirates. Please take your floor.
شكرا فخامة الرئيس. فخامة سيريل رامافوزا رئيس جمهورية جنوب أفريقيا الصديقة، أصحاب الجلالة والفخامة والسمو، أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، الحضور الكريم، يسعدني في البداية أن أنقل إليكم تحيات صاحب السمو الشيخ محمد بن زايد آل نهيان رئيس الدولة حفظه الله، وتمنياته بالنجاح أعمال قمة مجموعة ال20. وتقدم بخالص الشكر إلى فخامة الرئيس سيريل رامافوزا على دعوته الكريمة لدولة الإمارات للمشاركة في أعمال مجموعة ال20 لهذا العام.
First of all, it is my pleasure to convey to you the greetings of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, President of the United Arab Emirates, along with his sincere wishes for the success of this G20 summit.
السيدات والسادة يأتي اجتماعنا
I
اليوم
would also like to
ليجسد
take
روح
this
الشراكة
opportunity to
العالمية
thank His Excellency Cyril
ويدعم
Ramaphosa
ترابط
for
الأسواق
inviting the UAE to
والتكامل
participate
الاقتصادي
in
بين
this year's
الدول
G20 summit and to
عبر
express the
مختلف
UAE's
الأقاليم.
appreciation for the efforts undertaken by the South African
وتعمل دولة
presidency
الإمارات
in
بشكل
hosting
مستمر
the summit for the first time in
مع
Africa.
شركائها على تعزيز مسار التعاون الاقتصادي العالمي وترسيخ نظام تجاري دولي متوازن
Ladies and gentlemen, our meeting today embodies the spirit of global
بما
partnership,
يتيح مشاركة
strengthening
شاملة
collaboration
وفعالة
between economies across
للدول
every
النامية
region of the world.
في صياغة
The UAE
مستقبل
continues
النظام
to work
التجاري
closely with its
العالمي
partners to drive global economic
مما
cooperation.
يعزز
We
الوصول
are committed
إلى
to building
أفضل
a balanced and
الحلول
transparent
التمويلية
international trading system, a
لتطوير
system that is
المشاريع
inclusive and
التنموية
effective, that enables the
والاستثمارية في مجالات
participation of developing
التكنولوجيا
countries in shaping
المتقدمة
the future of
والطاقة
global trade,
والصحة
and that
والزراعة
ensures access to better
مع
financing
تركيزنا
solutions
المستمر على
to
بناء
advance
القدرات
development.
ونقل المعرفة وتمكين المجتمعات.
In addition to advanced development,
ويسرني
also
اليوم
investment projects across
أن
critical
أعلن
sectors, including
عن إطلاق
advanced
مبادرة دولة
technology,
الإمارات
energy, health and
الذكاء
agriculture.
الاصطناعي
In
من أجل
addition, the UAE
التنمية
continues to prioritize building
التي
capabilities,
تخصص
transferring
مليار
knowledge,
دولار
and empowering
أمريكي
communities.
لتمويل مشاريع الذكاء
Today, I
الاصطناعي
am pleased to announce the launch
في
of the
الدول
UAE
الأفريقية
initiative, AI for Development,
بهدف
which
دعم التنمية
allocates $1
الاقتصادية
billion
والاجتماعية
to
من خلال
finance artificial
تعزيز
intelligence
منظومة
projects
البنية
in
التحتية
African
الرقمية
nations. This
والارتقاء
initiative will strengthen digital
بالخدمات
infrastructure
الحكومية
to support social and
لرفع
economic
الإنتاجية
development, enhancing
وتحسين
government
جودة
services
الحياة.
to boost productivity and
الحضور
improving
الكريم،
quality of life.
نجدد اليوم تأكيد
Distinguished
التزام
guests,
دولة الإمارات
today
العربية
we reaffirm
المتحدة
the UAE's
بالعمل
commitment
مع
to
جميع
working with all
شركائها
its partners in
في
the
مجموعة
G20
العشرين
to
لترسيخ
advance
مسيرة التنمية
development and
والازدهار
prosperity across
في
the
العالم
world.
أجمع.
Thank you.
شكرا لكم.
Thank you, Your Highness. My last speaker in this segment, before we take a break for the family photo, whereafter we will then get international organizations to have their opportunity to speak. I now ask His Excellency Mr. Lee Kinyanjao, the Minister of Investment, Trade and Industry in the Republic of Kenya, who are also chairpersons of the East African Community. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Excellency. I talk on behalf of His Excellency Lee Kenyajui, the Minister of Trade and Industry. I wish to take this opportunity to thank you for the invitation and the warm reception. So His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa and Chair of G20, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we wish to record our profound appreciation to the South African presidency of the G20 for its diligent stewardship and unwavering commitment to advancing a more equitable global economic order. We acknowledge the indispensable role that the G20 continues to play in addressing the deep-seated structural constraints confronting developing economies. This summit presents an excellent opportunity for us to examine the current state of play in the global economy as we devise the best trajectory towards achieving sustainable, inclusive, and transformative development. In this regard, we wish to express our support for the call to reform the international financial architecture so that it may deliver more substantial, more accessible, and more equitable development financing. As regions, we confirm our readiness to collaborate closely with all with all the relevant partners to ensure that the East African Community region and the common market for East and Southern Africa and the African continent as a whole are not merely beneficiaries, but full equal participants in the shaping of a more inclusive, sustainable, and representative global economy. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome G20 efforts to advance global disaster risk financing, investment in early warning systems for all, and strengthen capacity building across developing regions. We further support stronger G20 leadership in delivering predictable, adequate, and accessible climate finance for both adaptation and mitigation. This includes honoring existing commitments and developing new fair financing instruments that reflect the needs of vulnerable regions. The East African Community and COMESA remain committed to transforming food systems to become more productive, climate resilient, nutrition sensitive, and inclusive, especially for smallholder farmers, women, and youth. Chair, we stand ready to work with all partners, including G20, to deepen cooperation in agricultural research, seed systems, trade facilitation, storage logistics, while advancing value addition and intra-regional trade to reduce vulnerability to external shocks. I thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We will now get the announcements of how the family photo will be taken in the various segments. And thereafter, we will be able to come back, and I'd like to give us 20 minutes to have the photo taken, and thereafter come back so that we can resume the whole process of getting our international organizations to take the platform. So we will get the announcements now.
Your Excellencies, we now invite you to the family photo, which will be done in 2 phases. The first photo will only include G20 members. Thereafter, for the second photo, we will invite every other invited guest and international organization on the family photo stage. Kindly note that in the first row will be G20 members, the second guest countries, and the third international organizations. Excellences, nous vous invitons à la photo de famille qui aura lieu en 2 étapes. En premier lieu, les pays membres seulement. En deuxième, tous les autres participants seront invités à rejoindre les pays membres. Au premier rang, les pays membres du G20. Au deuxième, les pays invités. Au troisième, les organisations internationales. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Let us proceed.